Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Alma Cox. In today's video, I'm going to show you my thinking process as I create a pattern collection. I began with this frog in my sketchbook. Here he is. And I had not intended for this to evolve into a pattern collection, but he kind of captured my heart. He's pretty cute, and I just got some more ideas. So I created a list of some motifs. And you can see here, for example, that I recreated the shape of his head in another motif, and then I added him to a pair of rain boots behind me. So I'm going to show you just how I take these background pages to kind of create collage motifs. So it doesn't take a lot. I'm not going to show you exactly how to create a pattern. I will be using the app Procreate. But I am going to share my tips, my choices, why I select colors the way I do, and hopefully you will find that helpful. I hope that you will look at your motifs in your sketchbook in a new way and possibly think about creating a collection yourself, or at the very least, a cool pattern that you can apply to a lot of fun things. Okay, without further ado, let's get going. Thank you. It was a lazy Sunday when I took out my pencil and sketchbook and just drew this cute frog. I had some reference photos that I found on Pexels, and I really didn't even intend to paint it, but I thought he turned out pretty cute, and so that's when I thought I would videotape for you and see where this might lead. I'm using acrylic gouache paints by Holbein, and I love them because they're very opaque and creamy, and they have a little bit of a matte finish, which I really love. I'm using a Canson sketchbook. It's called Graduate. It's a hot press paper, which means that it's smooth, which I do like. However, this particular sketchbook does not take a lot of water very well. And I found when you watch me do the background, it kind of pills up just a little bit if I use excessive water, which I end up doing. So more than a week went by, and I decided I would cut the frog and the flower out, and then I kept thinking about this idea of a pattern, and I really liked that echinacea flower, but I didn't want to paint several of them. So I just sketched them out on my iPad and filled them in their silhouette with a solid color. I also saw a photo, I believe it was in Pinterest, of a cute ladybug floating on a dandelion seed. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna create my own version and add that as well. How I chose the background is I selected this pink, and I went to the color menu, and under Harmony, you can find colors that are harmonious with the colors that you have in your artwork. And I went to complementary, but I fell in love right away with this aqua color under split complementary. So at this point, I'm getting excited with the colors, and like I said before, I sketched out a ladybug, and so I thought, I'm going to paint the sketchbook background in pinks and make my ladybug pink. And then I thought, I need some more motif ideas, because if this is really expanding, then I need a little bit of help. So I went to ChatGPT and I sketched out on my iPad the short list of ideas that it gave me. But it was super fun to then get a hit of inspiration to have the frog peeking out of the boots. And I wanted these to be painterly, so I just decided to use the backgrounds that I already had just to create a little bit different look for the frog. All I needed was his head, and I needed his little hands, I guess they're called, I don't know. Then I did, the similar thing with the moth, and I knew that I wanted to add some digital components to the moth, possibly. I knew in my head that I wanted some collage. So I decided I would just do some minimal lines like with the moth. And I like the painted approach, the handmade painted approach, because you just can't replicate that in Procreate. So I didn't do the entire insect. I just did parts of it, the top of the ladybug. And again, I knew that I would be using the backgrounds for the bodies. So I took several photos of the background so that I could get up close on the texture. And here you see me in Procreate cutting pieces out from the background, that pink background you saw me make, and then also using the head to make dots that have that texture. I then traced the silhouette of the ladybug that I created and just put that little bit sketch all over the boots so I knew where I would place them, and this will make more sense as you watch this progress. So I brought in a picture of the background, and I just needed a small piece, and I just, zoom in on these pictures so that I get all that good texture, and then I simply do a cutout of the sole of the boot, and this is what I mean by collage. So I just use the pieces of the background to build the image that I want to create. For the body of the boot, I'm using the pink background, and I'll just create a clipping mask. I will do a quick silhouette of the boot and fill it in with black, and then I'll attach that background to the black surface, creating a clipping mask. Next, it's time to put the cute frog in the boot, so I cut him out, and then I place him, and then I use the same background in the same way that I did the sole of the boot. I do the insides of the boot in the same exact way, cutting out the shapes. Next, I went to go get the ladybug from the first frog pattern, and I always make sure I keep the original largest size of all the motifs that I have, and then I can go ahead and copy them and reuse them in the other patterns, like in this case here on the boot. For the boat, I just used a piece of the painted background in an off-white, and you'll notice that not much changes between the sketch and what the final boat does look like. But I just cut out the boat, and then I get the shape, and then I go in with the sketching pencil to put in those pencil lines, sort of as if somebody had drawn out a sketch before they folded the boat. So just some simple lines so you can kind of see where those fold lines are. For the snail, I changed the color of one of the backgrounds first, then I duplicated it. Then to get rid of the seam, I actually used the clone stamp tool so that I can create just an even texture, and that seam would go away. And this way I could keep the snail big. I just needed to create a larger piece of paper for his body. And then I used a pink background for his shell. And then in the same way that I duplicated the background for the snail, I did a similar thing for the water puddle that the boat would be floating in, using a small piece of the background and then just duplicating it to make it bigger. I decided I want to use the boat and the puddle with the rain boots, so I arranged different sizes of the boots together. And for the background, I choose the color of one of the flowers in the original frog pattern. I really like using unexpected colors together, and again, it's all based on feel. And yeah, in my mind's eye, I see a flower that the moth floats over, so I just decide to make a flower that is similar to what the original echinacea type flower would look like, if it were in full bloom. And it's really an abstract, but I'm using the background pieces in this sped up video to show you how it all comes together. And it was super fun to make. I auditioned the moth with the flower you just saw me create with the snail, but I decided that I think it was better suited with the snail. Remember that with the original painting of this moth, I only did one side of it, and that's because in Procreate, I can easily duplicate the other side. And to make this pattern more interesting, I used the little leaves from the original sketchbook, and also I traced over the silhouette of the moth to just create a couple motifs that echo the design, but are a little bit different. For the dragonfly, I brought in the drawing of it, and then I brought in one of the backgrounds again. And this time I dragged in that very bright green. That's probably the brightest green I could find on the frog. And then I simply cut out the different wing shapes. And here I'm going to show you what they all look like already put together. And then I did the same thing for the body and the head. I brought in a different background. Again, this is all the same one background, just that I took different pictures of it, and just it was the lighting, made them all just a little bit different. I zoomed in on different parts of the image. But you can see like the shapes are just very basic, very childlike. But what makes it fun is finding that light and dark and making it work depending on, what part of the background I pick. And here you can see that once they're layered, they do look pretty good together. And then I took the black from the ladybug head, again, to use the dots. And then I used the sketching pencil to add some details, and I used a little brightness, and then I created this little scallop edge using the pen tool under the studio pen under inking. And then I used the darkest blue I could find from the water from the boat. And here you can see that the pattern is repeating. So I just took the same dragonfly, made him smaller, and created a pattern, one motif, but it looks cute. For the next blender, I cut out some wonky circular shapes. I did create a pattern with them. Notice that they're not perfect. I did repeat them. And then I went to the boots, the rain boots, and used that background color again using the Harmony tool. And under Tetradic, I really liked that green. So that is the color that I decided to go with. I really love this color combination, and I'm definitely going to save this for another collection. But I felt like it was a little too intense for what I had going on with the other patterns. And I changed their color using the saturation tool. And I just moved through the various colors. You can see just how gorgeous some of these colors are. I mean, you could just go crazy. I landed on this one because it reminded me of the snail. It reminded me of the original flowers from the frog pattern. And I thought that this would coordinate really well. And I also loved how, in combination with the green background, it really reminded me of frog skin. To make the hero pattern, the frog pattern, a little more interesting, I decided that I would use the pen tool to just do some lines around this flower and just keep it really simple. And in this way, I could create a blender using, this particular motif, and I could also use it for the frog just to give it a little more depth. And then when I put all of these elements together, I decided to not use the dragonfly that I'd created with the collage elements, but instead use his general shape. So that way I didn't detract from the frog. I didn't want the dragonfly to be too interesting. I wanted the frog to stand out. And then I just added that little snail to the top of the flower, and that was, just kind of a serendipity. I wasn't planning on it, but again, I just thought that little snail just added a little more attention to what was happening with the frog. And I used the same color from the petal of the flower for the dragonfly. And for this last blender, I lightened up the background again considerably, and I just decided to cut some wonky lines using the selection tool. And I just basically cut all of them out across the entire piece of paper and clean them up a little bit. And then I decided to rotate them so that they would be perpendicular to each other. I decided to go with that same dragonfly wing color for the background. I wanted it to be very bright so that I could have something high contrast. And then finally, here they are. I haven't altered any of the colors, but I did put them together in this little, mock quilt. I really like how the colors turned out, and even though they're unexpected, I feel like they work together. And again, I attribute that to using that Harmony tool. And I like how the hero pattern really jumps out because it is very vibrant compared to the others. But I think there's a good mix of darks and lights to complement or contrast the medium values that I have going on too. So thank you so much for your attention. It's the next day and it's early, so I'm about to go on my walk. But I do want to ask, if you have any questions regarding my process, regarding anything that you saw here today, I welcome your questions. I would love to hear from you in the comments. As many of you know, I've been on this journey to license my artwork, and being a surface designer is part of that. And so that is why I'm really excited and determined, to make these patterns and to get better at it. And I just thank you for joining me on this journey. All right, well, happy creating. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you in a month. Take care.